Welcome, Taurus, to Pluto at a Strange Land. Your spring video reading. My name is Eric Francis Compolino, friendly neighborhood astrologer and investigative reporter, working in the Broadway Lights Diner here in Midtown Kingston, New York. Here with your spring video reading here in the springtime of your life as Pluto gets ready to change signs and many, many other things are in motion and afoot. Before I get into astrology, I just want to acknowledge the difficulty and incredible stress that we have all been put through for the past 3 years. It wasn't easy navigating and negotiating our society in 2019 or 18 or 16 or 15, but it got a lot harder in 2020. And one of the reasons it got a lot harder was because there was incredible manipulation placed on us and on our families and companies through the internet and through abusing the social faculties of Aquarius. We really saw the dark side of Aquarius come out, and most of the nightmare did not involve people getting sick, although there were quite a few people murdered during this time. Most of the nightmare for most people involved being forced to do things, forced out of their jobs, forced out of their schools, their children forced out of their schools. For no good reason, our lives were completely upended. And this put people under incredible social pressure and families under social pressure, and a lot of bad things happened. We need to acknowledge that. And now it's left us in a culture that is only partially functional, that is not able to take care of people. It certainly wasn't that good at it in 2019, and it's even worse at it now. And the thing about the times we live in is the thing about modern life that I think you like the very least, which is everything being automated and technologized. It is very uncomfortable for you to have suddenly everything be an electrical device. And as you can see, while I may be working in all this cool digital equipment, I much prefer pencil, paper, hand-drawn charts. And so I do that because I like to do it and like to make art out of the astrology that I do, but also as a reminder just to stay in the analog world and the world of physical textures and the world of the slow passage of time and the world of human connection. And that, to me, that human connection means doing these readings in a human way and presenting my astrology in a way that is designed to reach you as a person and not as a consumer of data. And we're all being turned into these consumers of data, and I'm saying we've got to slow the fuck down about this. All right, so let's start with what's going on in Taurus for you. And from there, let's continue. We'll start again with what's going on in Aries, and I think very conveniently we're going to work our way backwards to Aquarius. We're going to basically cover, well, I'm looking at a chart here. We're going to cover, by the time I'm done, I'm going to cover 6 signs from Capricorn out to Gemini. And we'll do my best to weave it all together. So let's start with Uranus and Taurus. I'm going to work our way up to Pluto and Aquarius. Uranus in Taurus is combining 2 radically different principles. Taurus serves you and all of us as the principle of stability. Uranus is the principle of radical, revolutionary, unexpected, even unmanageable change. And so we've got this real tension going on in Taurus that we are all feeling in some way, but that you have been living with in a very intimate way since it began in 2018. So we're almost 5 years into this experience, and it's almost like you were a normal fish and now suddenly you're an electric eel, or you were, let's see, what you would never in your entire life dream of sleeping with an electric blanket, but suddenly you feel like you're walking around wrapped in one all the time. There's a lot of electrical symbolism with Uranus, discovered at the dawn of the age of electricity, and in many ways representing electricity and what it has done to all of us. What Uranus also does to you is it has been destabilizing in a way that is potentially quite uncomfortable. You prefer things to stay the way they are and to change incrementally. The seasons changing is probably more than enough change for you. You don't need life to be radically different every year or every 2 years, or need to, change living spaces very often. You like stability. And so there's kind of been this electrodes plunged into Taurus. Now, let's get back to Capricorn up here. Capricorn's your ninth house. Before I started this, where Pluto's been. Before I started this reading, I was sitting here eating my mashed potatoes in the Broadway lights, and I was thinking, how many horoscope columns have I written since Pluto entered Capricorn? Probably 1,000. And I would say, because I wrote about 500 or 600 dailies for the Daily News, and I would say that every time I have written a Taurus horoscope, I have wondered about and contemplated the meaning of Pluto moving through your ninth house. And this too is a destabilizing influence, but it's, for you, has been destabilizing in a very important way, because it has deconstructed your expectations of what life should be that were put on you by certain ancestors, particularly on the maternal side, which works for the ninth, and it works for Capricorn as well. And there has been a complete reconstitution of your moral nature and your spiritual nature under the influence of Pluto in Capricorn. Carl Jung is reputed to have said once, in a statement that made less sense to me 40 years ago than it does today, makes a lot of sense today. He said, religion is largely the substitute for religious experience. And when you look at religion, you open up the Bible to the book of Ezekiel, for example. Well, Ezekiel had this flying saucer land in front of it, right? Oh, and then it became in the Bible. And then people for the next, Ezekiel, Old Testament or New Testament, I don't know, 2,000 years, 5,000 years, have been reading about this experience that this person, maybe he didn't exist, but let's assume he did, had thousands of years ago. And for him, it was a religious experience. It was a manifestation of the beauty of the cosmos. And for us, it's just a thing that we repeat and read over and over and over again. Okay, so that's the religious experience thing, is Capricorn in the ninth house. But Pluto going through has brought you the direct experience of making contact with your soul. And in the process of that, has burned and demolished and gutted various things. I just flashed to an image of Notre Dame Cathedral burning. Do you remember this? That completely outrageous sight that was, I walked past that cathedral every day for years. It would never once have occurred to me that it can burn. But under the influence of Pluto and Capricorn, we even had one of the world's most famous, certainly in Christendom, religious icons engulfed in flames. Absolutely incredible. Visible throughout the entire city of Paris. That's kind of like Pluto going through Capricorn, but in the spiritual sense of bringing you into contact with your actual personal spiritual truth, the journey of your soul. And to do that, you've had to get out of the way all the crap that was laid on you all your life, and going into the lives of your maternal ancestors, up the maternal line, including certain women influencing you on your father's side of the family. And find your way. Find your own journey. All right. So, bearing that in mind, this is one of the major antecedents to Pluto going into the next house, which is Aquarius. Angular house, very closely connected to Taurus. Let's hold that thought. But remember that this Pluto in Capricorn, keep the image of Notre Dame Cathedral burning in your mind. And remember that for you, that's like a spiritual thing directly experienced of the internal church burning, but replaced by the direct fire of spirit. Okay, so we've talked about earthy Capricorn. We talked about your sign, earthy Taurus. Let's back up one sign. We're going to talk about Aries. So as I've said a million times, and I say this in pretty much every reading, I think it's great fun, and I continue to have an inordinate number of Taurus friends, most of whom have Venus and Aries. I have a thing, like, astrology can be so specific that you manifest a certain kind of people, and I've manifested quite a few people who are Tauruses with Venus and Aries. So Aries is the sign of self-actualization. The 12th house, where you have Aries, here, chapter 12, chapter right before chapter 1 is chapter 12, is where we seek Aries is where we seek self-actualization. The 12th is where self dissolves, where the concept of who we are dissolves. And so in fairly typical Taurus fashion, because Taurus embodies a lot of internal contradictions, but you can often do it with the precision of a BMW going down the highway at 90 miles an hour. There's all explosions happening very fast and the metal holding it all together. And in part of that kind of internal combustion process that you've got going on as a Taurus is Aries in the 12th house, the sign of the personal combustion into becoming oneself in the house of the disappearing self. Wow, that sounds like an intense trip or a lot of work. And the work is finding yourself, and the work is trusting the discoveries that you make about yourself. And there has been no shortage of stuff going on in Aries. I'm drawing in all the things that I left out of this chart, because I'm using the same charts I used for inner space. And so in Aries right now, we have most of the action. We have a lot of combustion going on in Aries, and that includes Chiron, includes Salacia, a 270-year orbit, Chiron 51-year orbit, Eris 557, I think, and then Jupiter blowing through town till May, and then Venus, and then Vesta, the eminently important, perhaps most important asteroid, at least in my opinion, and then Juno. So it's like, whoa, there's a lot going on. Lights, please. A lot going on in Aries right now. And so there's a lot of self-actualization, combustion going on, but it's as if it's happening like in a secret room right next to you, and then every now and then, like, the door opens and you get a clue, or you look inside and see what's going on. What I suggest is, particularly with Venus in Aries, is that you go into that room and hang out there for a while and see what's brewing and boiling and combusting, and actually work closely with your self-actualization process, your process of awakening to yourself, to merging the waking dream with the sleeping dream, instead of letting it exist in this kind of world apart, which it would be fairly natural for Taurus, but also a lot of other people do it. They live in this kind of world apart. And that doesn't allow them to do this very necessary merging with oneself, this self-becoming, where yourself just kind of grows out of the interior of who you are, and then that's who you become. You go in that room and let that happen. So the thing is, it could feel like a lot of pressure. It can feel like fear. It can feel like the fear to change. It could feel like you're fucking sick of change and you've had enough of it. A lot of things it can feel like. But ultimately what's going on is that you are growing and becoming. All right, let's go back one more house. No, wait. Absent-minded professor forgot something super important. So Aries has this powerful role in any chart in the entire zodiac. And the role that it has is, as Alice Bailey put it, to turn the ignition key of the universe. I call that, well, leaning in and out of psychological astrology, I call that the self-actualization process. Ruling the planet of turning the key of the ignition of the universe is the planet Mars. And you have had Mars for 7 months. It's about to end. The ruler of Aries, the representative of this hidden process of your 12th house, right? Maybe the diagram will help. So here's the 12th. Think of the 12th as this hidden, everything in here is kind of a hidden process, right? But Mars can be in any sign. And at the moment, Mars is in Gemini. See it right there. And it's been there for 7 months. And so the representative of the 12th house, of all this secret interior stuff in your quest for who you are, has taken up residence in your 3rd house. Well, the 3rd house is like the on-the-air monitor. The 3rd house is your conscious, sentient thoughts. It is your mental patterns. It is your kind of working beliefs. It is your immediately local area. It represents commerce, which is a tremendously important thing in human affairs, though it's ongoing being exploited by tyrants. But the fact of needing to go somewhere and buy a quart of milk is a very important thing that we humans do, because we make the money and buy the milk and meet the person who sells the milk and have the exchange and bring it home and then live on it and then go back and do it again. And we learn and we grow from that. That's all the 3rd house. But what Mars retrograde in the 3rd house is also describing is the process of cancel all that to a point. I've got that wrong. It's the 2nd house, even closer to home. I'm not going to edit this. Gemini in itself is going to bring a 3rd house property. Let's merge that now with an even more intimate house in your chart, the 2nd house. So here we go. So we've got Gemini on the 2nd house. So you bring all of that mental patterning, all of that local commerce stuff, all of that communication style stuff, but now you're really experiencing it in an intimate way in your 2nd house of your values, your priorities, your sense of self-worth, your sense of your self-respect. In addition, all of your movable assets and your talents. Now, just inherently, there's a split in the 2nd house because you've got Gemini there. And so that's saying that you may have 2 radically different concepts of who you are operating at the same time, again in Gemini style, in conflict with one another. This is not easy. But in some ways, it's kind of fun, because what Gemini is really good at doing is shape-shifting, and so therefore you may be as comfortable hanging out with people who are really simple-minded as you are hanging out with people who are sophisticated and smoke cigarettes and cigarette holders. The Mars retrograde process has been a tremendous challenge in terms of unifying these splits in your value system and also making peace with your local community. This has gone on since August, and it is a special phase. Mars is not retrograde in any one sign very often. It can go many years between retrogrades, and especially considering that Mars tends to favor certain signs for long phases, so it could be 10 or 20 years much longer between retrogrades of Mars in any one sign. So this is special, and it's woken you up. And you have been called to reconcile these seeming opposites of yourself, and that has a lot of the tension that we're seeing in other signs as they represent your experience. For example, Uranus in your own sign, that's got a lot of tension. Pluto in the 9th, challenging everything you believe, That's got a lot of tension. And Mars in the second is challenging all of your beliefs and values about yourself. This is a lot of work. And here's the interesting thing about all of this. Mars represents your 12th house. So Mars is this hidden dimension of who you are made manifest as a thing that takes action in the world. And this may help you understand certain mysteries of what motivates you and so forth like that, because it's a little mysterious what motivates you and what, yeah, I would say that that's a statement unto itself, because Aries is a crucial source of motivation. It is hidden in the 12th. Mars is a product of that, but it shows up in the world. Well, what's it doing? Here's the ultimate point of all that I'm saying. Mars, in this retrograde pattern, has made a series of squares to Neptune. It's about to make the third, the most glorious, on the 14th. Mars square Neptune, Mercury, and the Sun, all on the same day. And this is some kind of major discovery. And it's the last major discovery that you're making right before Pluto enters Aquarius. Part of where this discovery is being acted out is your 11th house, this ever important 11th house. A house very much associated with community, a house associated with the revenue from your profession. It is how you are, how you present yourself in social environments, who you feel comfortable with. I would say that you're probably not the kind of person who likes to be in overly loud spaces. If you're going to be in a public space of some kind, you probably want to be able to speak in approximately the tone of voice that I'm speaking in. You want it to be the colors no more. This is quite tasteful, I think. These muted blues and grays. Out warmer than that. Nice, livable, soft. This environment has been under the influence of Neptune for about 12 years. It has been very difficult to get your social bearings during this time. There have been ups and downs. Chiron came through at a certain point. That was helpful. That ended in 2018. Was true for about 6 years, 7 years leading up to that. There's got a little relief from that. But it's been difficult to find your place in the world and find friends, made worse by all this digital kind of tyranny that we're experiencing and people thinking that they're robots. Saturn has entered Pisces. Saturn entering Pisces is an answer to and a containment of all that Neptune in Pisces and all that Mars square Neptune in Pisces, which has been, again, I think, precipitating more change than you are interested in. My take is that Saturn in Pisces is going to stabilize things for a while. It's especially going to stabilize things for you. It will help you figure out who your friends are and who your friends aren't, and help you make sure that your balance of exchanges with friends are healthy and work for you, and that you understand that when you live in the presence of another person, you live in the presence of their culture. You're in a sense entering their world and sometimes creating a shared world, but sometimes actually entering and being within their world. And it works the other way, but you know about people coming into your secluded private space. You have to enter their private space, and I think this is also, and this is going to trim up, be more manageable, be more observable. There will be more, let's say, documentable facts and the reality principle entering this. So you're going to make discoveries about the people you've associated with, and you're going to come to revelations about the relationships that you have been in. And I think this and other things indicate the importance of your understanding the social role that you have. So the time is about to run out. I'm going to start a new file, and then I will be back in a digital instant. Social, crucial, 11th house. But here's where this turns into Pluto entering Aquarius. Because you are one sign off from what some astrologers call the natural chart, you get all kinds of really interesting blending of house and sign in the Taurus solar chart. One example of that is the blending of Aries in the 12th, the ultimate sign of self-expression, self-actualization in the house of self-dissolving, for example. Another interesting example up at the top of the chart is that you have Aquarius in your 10th place. And this is responsible for all kinds of interesting effects in your life. And it also helps us understand something about the nature of Taurus and its often very formal nature and its nature of needing to have a very clean and tidy reputation because there's a strong conformist factor of Aquarius. So the 10th house is about one's profession, but it's also about one's reputation. It's about how someone is known. And when you take the house of groups and the sign of groups and of conformity, which is Aquarius, and you put it on the 10th, you get a very risk-averse position. And the position of wanting to be known specifically for who you want to present yourself as being. Very conscious, not exactly of image, though that factors into it, but rather of how you are known, thought of, and referred to. And this is part of the very strongly conformist nature of Taurus. Aquarius has that too, but Aquarius does, there's an opposite side to this, which we're going to get into in a second. But let's just say if you're wondering why it is you need to be as strange as you want, but be perceived as being like everyone else, that's Aquarius 10th. Now, within that, Aquarius, in a sense, calls forth and demands individuation. It demands individuality because you know that if you do not practice true individuality, you are potentially going to get squashed. You're going to get crushed. And so you were made to stand up. You were made to assert your true being and your reputation for who you really are. But it has got this typical Taurus tension of asserting your individuality while at the same time having to remain integrated into and perceived as someone who is wholly social and not breaking too many rules. It's a lot of tension to live with. And let me say, you can give yourself a lot more freedom than you are typically giving yourself. And by the way, I think a lot of this propensity to orthodoxy has something to do with where Pluto has been for the last 10 years. Capricorn on the 9th gives you a predisposition to doing things the right way at the right time and being orthodox about things. But Pluto has demolished that. Pluto has given you the opportunity to realize that you must exist as a free being within yourself. And now Pluto is going to change houses and it is going to enter an angular house, meaning one of the most influential of all the houses, which is 1, 10, 7, upside down, and 4. 1, 10, 7, and 4. All the fixed signs. Whatever happens in one of the fixed signs happens to all the fixed signs. And you're going to get that thing in the style of Pluto entering the 10th house. My assertion is, and I've been writing this in the horoscope now going back easily a year and a half, is more than that because of Saturn and Aquarius, is that you are going to be put in a position of leadership, of social leadership, meaning informal leadership, but also there's going to be elements of formal leadership involved. And part of the problem that I think you're going to be confronting as someone in leadership in this new age of Pluto in Aquarius is the leadership of what it means to remain human. We are full on into the time of transhumanism. Most people are treating transhumanism like it's some kind of a conspiracy theory, but transhumanism is the conversion of humans into being robotic devices by exposure to robotic devices, by having to act like robotic devices, by being exposed 24/7 to robotic devices right into the present moment. And these things convince us to be like them. Over and over again, we adapt our behavior, our thought patterns, our ideas, our sense of our own being to adapt to these robotic devices. And this is very much a factor of what's going on in Aquarius. Okay, so preserving your humanity and taking leadership in the preservation of humanity is going to be a very important element of your social, spiritual, and professional life for the duration of this Pluto in Aquarius era. Aquarius is such an important sign for a diversity of reasons, and I've gone into this in the introduction as well. But I'm going to say it again here because Aquarius, as kind of the crowning sign in your chart, right? The sign that's on top of the chart is an important sign in that chart. It is what you're aspiring to. Is what you it is a crucial place to connect to the world. By some valid arguments, more important than the rising sign, which is one of the most important places where you meet the world. But when you talk about the 10th is where you meet the world of society, the world of power, the world of governmental authority. And you have Aquarius there, and so that overlays with a tremendous amount of power the social aspects of life. And we have Aquarius, which is a sign famous for its conformist properties, its crystallization properties, for its calcification of social patterns. Look at what we've been through the past 3 years of Saturn in Aquarius. Look at the drama of the individual pitted against the collective, and the collective thinking it has to pit itself against the individual to the point where I heard a story that made my blood boil the other day. Vashon Island, where I founded the corporation Planet Waves Incorporated, this person who's serving as a reporter for Planet Waves right now said that it was practically vigilante justice of people chasing people down who are not wearing masks. That's sick. There's no way that anyone covering their faces, anybody's damn business, certainly outside the house where the wind is blowing on a heap of basically junk towering above a bay 900 feet deep. The wind's blowing. You're not going to catch a mosquito can't even bite you. So this stalking property that we have lived through, you will do what we say or we will cut off your food supply. This is an expression of toxic Aquarius. Assess what you've been through the past 3 years. Grade yourself on whether you have been conformist, whether you've pressured people to do anything they didn't want to do, whether you have stood up to the challenges, whether you have just been plain miserable, whether you've been confused. How did you handle yourself the past 3 years of Saturn and Aquarius, which ended yesterday? We are now about to get that in a whole new form, elongated for 2 decades of Pluto in Aquarius. So how you did under Saturn and Aquarius is very important because it's going to talk to you about your predispositions. It's going to give you a baseline reading of whether or not you are inclined to... Sorry, fire engine's going by. Okay. That was loud. Inclined to comply, inclined to be a bully, inclined to stand your ground, or any of the many possibilities in between? How did you do? Pluto, now entering Aquarius, is going to ramp up this energy exponentially, and it will bring forth, I think, two major facets. I might think of a third one while I'm talking. The first one is it is likely to strongly accentuate the tension between the individual and the group. The groups are going to be more inclined to put pressure on people. The individuals are going to be more inclined to put pressure on groups. And then what do we have? Where do you stand in the middle of all this? The second thing is that we are going to experience group initiation. We have to experience group initiation. Right now, what we've got is a bunch of groups serving essentially performing the role of vigilante justice. There are a lot of highly evolved people, and many of them turn into total assholes when you put them in a group situation, especially a group of 5 or more. Here's where the leadership factor comes in for you of Pluto and Aquarius. We all live by example, and there's no words we can say that can speak more loudly than the examples we set by the actions that we take. And you are going to be in a kind of a spotlight with Pluto and Aquarius, and you're going to be in a position of initiation of leadership, and you're going to be involved in both formal and informal settings where you will have a profound influence over the direction that the group takes. This takes skill. It takes learning a kind of a tactfulness, but not the kind of tactfulness that is politeness to avoid conflict, but rather the kind of tactfulness that is designed to provoke the right kind of conflict. The right kind of conflict. So, this is basically a kind of a second public initiation for you. You had a kind of a dry run of Saturn going through Aquarius for the past 3 years. Now you're going to get the full strength version of that. It's going to move slowly, but one thing about Pluto transits is they can be very influential from the moment that they begin. One thing I would suggest is spending as much time in groups in person as possible. This cannot completely antidote the effects of the internet, but it can remind you what it's like to actually relate to people in person. And I would suggest avoiding group interactions in digital format as much as possible, and instead sticking to one-on-one situations or even subsets of some group that you might encounter, rather than doing like Zoom meetings or something like that. I know they are to some extent unavoidable, but to the extent you can avoid them and consciously shape your life as much as you can, stay in person and not conveying or recording things in digital devices. I personally rather be in a private session doing this reading or in a lecture hall doing it, but here we are. This is what we've got, and this is a one-on-one encounter that we are having. But you want to stay with warm-bodied flesh and blood reminders of what human beings are and feel the influence that we have over each other. I've been very firm with this in guiding the people in East Palestine to not have these meetings on Zoom. People have to meet together in a space so they can feel one another, see one another, hear the subtle tones and see their facial expressions, and be reminded of physical reality. And this is the underlying urgent necessity of the Pluto in Aquarius era. And you are going to set one of the most important examples for all of the people around you. All right. Thanks for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Ending my first day of doing these readings, feeling pretty good and grateful to be in motion. Thank you for your time invested in listening and your business and your trust. And I'll see you over at your rising sign, unless you are Taurus rising. Okay. Till then. Bye for now.